Hello everyone! We're going to cover masking today. Two other little things I want to cover just as a follow-up to the first video. The first one is I'm going to play a segment from my previous little abridgment project here. And I want to cover two things here. The glow effect. This little crazy lighting you see here, this little cool kind of whiteness here is the glow effect. And there's one other little thing I want to show you based on this. I'm just going to play the segment.
Attention, students.
Just note here the FPS is going up and down.
Be a part of the sex ed curriculum. Please return all magic wands to my office.
I can tell. You're real special.
I don't know if you could notice, but there was something messed up about that. And the thing that was happening is that the audio was out of sync with the video. And that what basically happens is Blender plays every single frame of the video and displays it here. And it's playing at a frame rate of 23.81 FPS. A few more decimals on that, but just, you know, for the sake of it, we'll say 24 FPS. So 24 frames per second are being played here. But as you can, see here, the FPS is dropping here. It's going up and down, up and down, up and down. If it was a solid 24, we wouldn't have this issue, but because it's not, Blender is slowing itself down. It's not able to play at 24 FPS. It's playing something at a different speed here, right? The audio, though, is always going to play at 24 FPS. So what happens is the audio is playing faster than the video. It's going out of sync, and so we're getting things a lot earlier with the audio. The explosion was supposed to happen here, the sound here. The way to get around that is just to play the segment over and over again that you want, and to see what it is. So the explosion was happening here, and it was supposed to happen here. And her lip sync was completely out of whack before.
I can tell.
But here it's a lot better.
You're real special.
Another way to get around that is just to go down here and go to vsync here. So what vsync does is pretty much it's gonna skip frames here. It'll make sure the audio is always playing in relation to the video time here. So it's always lined up fairly well.
I can tell. You're real special.
Explosion happens there. No issue. I generally recommend we have vsync on pretty much all the time. The only drawback is it is skipping frames here in the video, so it's not going to play every single frame depending on how much lag you have here. And you have a lot of lag. If you have a lot of lag, you have no choice but to use vsync if you're trying to line stuff up, right? But what can happen, just to note, is it might skip a frame that has an error on it. Say I had an overdrop, and the overdrop kind of came a bit out, and it wasn't supposed to. It might actually skip that frame that it's had the error on, and so you might not notice until you actually render. But other than that, it's not. I pretty much have it on all the time. So I recommend just having it on. If I'm dealing with audio strips, just have it on. Even if you're not dealing with audio strips, it lets you know the pacing of things. So I could have some really bad slowdown, and it might take 10 seconds to play a very short segment, but in actuality, 10 seconds is from here to here, right? Maintains the pacing as well. So just have it on, in my opinion, all the time. But yeah, so we'll go to the glow effect now. The thing I want to show you here is that this is like 4 different components. It's an explosion happening in the window here. It's the glow effect. It's this scene here, as you can kind of see with the girl here. And it's like a transform where it's some kind of rumble. So we're doing like a little kind of a scale in, scale out, an XY kind of back and forth here, kind of rumble here. So I'll just show you one more time.
I can tell. You're real.
Alrighty, so let's look at the components here. We have our explosion, which is literally just this. Okay, that's all it is in the window there. That's all that's happening. And we have the original scene. So it's just these, you know, pretty much these two things combined with the glow effect are giving me this crazy thing. Let's just look at this. So we do Shift A on this scene here, and we go to glow here. And immediately we notice a big difference. I'm just going to mute this back and forth here. It's basically taking the lighting, the natural lighting, and amplifying it here. Getting a really intense kind of effect here. And if you go to the effect settings here, just N again, and make sure you have glow selected here. You can play with these three settings here. If you play with these two, you might run into a crash. Like, it consistently crashes in my case. You know, be careful about that. But you shouldn't have any issues playing with these three here. So you can set the basics with these here, these two here. And then the boost factor basically just amplifies everything. And these are kind of redundant. So I could have like one all the way up and the other one all the way down. You can have the other one all the way up and the other one all the way down. And then, you know, I could get the same thing for low boost as I can with these low on a high boost. So it's kind of interesting to play around with it. You can get, you know, different settings with the same effect. But yeah, so let's just go with something like let's go with something like this, just to kind of show you. We can add some keyframes here. Just hover over the settings, hit I, so these three here, and actually, because I did it so close here, I'm going to actually fade out instead. So I'm going to go to 0 here. And I'm going to do I again. So I'm going to go backwards just to show you. So my glow is going to get more and more intense. And forward to back, it kind of dies down. So I could do a back and forth kind of glow using keyframes here, which is what I did over here basically. Using a mask which we'll cover, basically go around here, and around her head, and up like that, and then putting the explosion in the window, and we can scale the explosion and all that stuff so that we see more of it. And then we just add a glow effect, and we end up with this really, you know, pretty easy, kind of cool looking scene here. And just do a little audio.
I can tell.
We add some little effects like a, you know, back and forth kind of transform, rumble effect, and we're good. Alrighty, so next I want to cover a couple of effect strips I did not cover last time. So we're going to go here. So let's look at, oops. Sorry, I was kind of playing around with this ahead of time so I could prepare it. Alright, so we're going to look at, if you click at any kind of strip, we looked at the strip kind of settings here. But we have this other setting, this modifiers setting here. And again, I just kind of resetting things here. But we click on it for the first time, we end up with this, right? So we're going to look at hue correct here. So just click that. What hue correct allows us to do is it allows us to change the color of any specific thing, of any specific color here. So say their uniforms, they're like blue, and the other stuff that's blue is just, you know, here and here. So I could change the color of the uniforms because it's one color here. So blue. So I'll go down here and I'll play with these three settings here, but let's go to H for now. And you go to the blue. See these kind of nodes here. So I click and drag the one that's in the blue area here, and I'm just going to drag it up and down and kind of release. You can see everything that's blue kind of just changes color here. So the important thing is you can change this as much as it lets you before you snap to somewhere else. So as long as you're not snapping away, you can click and drop anywhere up and down here. So we're gonna, let's go for, you know, the reddish, purplish color is good. So, you know, it applies to everything here, right? So next thing I want to show you here is, say I want to apply this to, you know, everything. You know, I could do it, you know, strip by strip. But there's another way you can do that. And you Shift A, adjustment layer. So generally adjustment layers, you bring those all the way to the top and you expand them to over, you know, drop whatever to, I guess, sorry, over, to overextend, to extend over top of whatever you want them to apply to. So if I go over here, I can actually mute this just to see what I did and what I didn't do type thing. So I'm going to apply the same effect to this adjustment layer. Actually, I'm going to apply a different one. So I click the adjustment layer. I go here. I'm going to do color balance because it's a really easy one to see. So, you know, you have a lot of settings. I'm just going to play with this setting. And you can apply keyframes here if I want to. So I get an eye and I can just, I'll just kind of show you quickly. So eyes, we got a back and forth color change here. And it kind of moves to, you know, change it in a certain way. And so what happens is, because I applied it here, it's going to apply to everything. So now everything's kind of messed up. So I'm just hitting H here to show you the difference. So I'm muting the adjustment layer to show you what it was originally and what it is now. So it's applying to everything that is beneath the layer here. So we can do a lot of cool stuff here. We'll look at masking in a bit. This is where I apply my masks, is via this way here. But you have brightness, contrast. You know, I usually use this one as well. And you can just mute them at any time. And the order does matter, so you can bring these up and down, and you can get different kind of effects based on how they are in relation to each other, if one's on top of the other type of thing. But yeah, it's pretty much that. There's one little caveat I want to talk about. Say I want to do the hue correct again for these clothes again. So I do that here. Oops, I'm going to go to H here. Alright, awesome. You might notice though, there's nothing to animate this with. I can't put any keyframes here. It doesn't let me. I can put one here, but that doesn't do anything in relation to what I want here, which is this to, you know, I want to change the color of this back and forth type thing. Well, if I want to go from on to off or off to on, there's a workaround here. I can basically go here and put a keyframe on the opacity. Then I set the opacity to 0 because, you know, 0 is off, 1 is on type of thing. So I do that and 0 to 1. So that's the way to work around any the fact they wouldn't let me put keyframes. It's a workaround basically. So I could have like her eye, for example, go from, you know, normal to bloodshot red if I wanted to, using this technique here. So the other thing I'm going to cover is, okay, so with my last tutorial, I ended up recording a mono strip like I am right now. So if you don't know, sorry, a mono track. So mono is just, you know, one channel of audio, and it plays from, you know, both of your speakers. So it looks like this basically. And stereo is, you know, there's a channel for the left speaker and a channel for the right speaker, and it looks like this. So you have a waveform here and a waveform there type thing. So with a mono strip, I inputted it into Blender, and it shows up like this. Basically, it shows up as a single waveform like this. But the thing is, that's the exact same as, you know, this is, and that's a stereo strip here, for example. So this is a stereo strip. It's, you know, looks like a mono strip, but it's actually a stereo strip. So it's kind of confusing. This is just, you know, the way Blender displays things. It displays everything as a mono strip, but it is in fact respecting whatever many channels the audio has when it's input. So just to kind of take note, if you input stereo strips, they are in fact stereo strips, but they look like mono strips, and you know, whatever. So this is a mono strip. The thing is, if I want to render this as a mono strip, you know, it's one channel, great, I can just render this out. I should get a single channel. I don't though, because Blender automatically goes to a stereo by default here. So to fix this, what we need to do is go here, go to Scene. So this is the Properties tab again, and by default it's set to this camera here. If I move over though to Scene, and I just go down here and go to Audio here, open this tab, and here I can change the output number of channels to whatever I want, basically. And I want mono here. It was set on stereo, so I just changed it to mono here. And that's pretty much it. I don't know what this does in relation to everything else, so you know, play with this at your own risk here. But yeah, because again, just to recap, you can render your audio with video via this, and you have its settings here, or you can render just audio using the mix down here, and it has its own settings here which do similar stuff. And if you want like the master volume switch for this can be found by making a scene of here. So if you do scene of whatever existing scene you have here, it'll make a giant green strip from the start to the finish of the render, and it'll include anything that was there. So it was like that, it would still look like this type thing. And so I can go here, and if it's just audio I'm interested in, I can change the master volume here. So it's the same thing as the master volume, you know, here type thing from 0 to 1 anyways. So I could, you know, decrease the volume to avoid clipping via that way, and then mix that down. So I would, you know, render out from here instead of there and do mix down like so. But again, just note the caveat that the very last audio strip, if there was like a little one, for example, at the end, it might get cut off. So generally you put like an extra strip just to make sure you don't run into that issue. But yeah, so I just wanted to cover that because there's no way I would figure that out intuitively anyways. Everything's kind of scattered around. But if you want to render out mono strips, you can. And actually learned that just yesterday. But yeah, really cool stuff. So a few little commands I want to cover just really briefly here. So I didn't mention this verbally out loud, but if you go between two strips and you hit backspace, it'll bridge everything to the right over to get rid of that little space there. So everything moved. I'll just undo and redo to show you again. Just, you know, everything moves. And that's what you want to happen, because you want the relationships to be respected between channels. And yeah, you want everything to move over if you want to get rid of space. Sorry, gaps in this case. So say I want to make space though. This is something I just learned yesterday again. Shift plus bar. Shift plus, I guess it'll show up as here. But it'll make a little space and everything moves over, right? I just hit backspace to undo everything here. You know, beforehand, before I knew this, I was basically duplicating a strip and using it as like a, I would hit G here again and just move it around like that. G, you know, click, G, click, G, click, just to move everything around. But that's a very ineffective way of doing it. If you just use these two commands, backspace and shift plus, you should be able to move things fairly easily, which is great. So another thing I want to mention is markers M. So you kind of notice these things here. This is a way to mark points of interest. Here it says hit M in the timeline, set a marker. And markers have their own little dialog box here. You can do some interesting stuff with them. You can, you know, move strips to the marker. you can play around with this. I don't really use it that much, but a few little cool things you can do there. So to delete a marker, you just hover over it, hit X, and then you just, hit delete, click delete, hit X, click, right click, hit X, left click, etc. To delete all your markers, you can just hover into the little timeline here, hit A, and you just hit A again and again and again, and you can just toggle them back and forth. Then delete markers. I'm just going to undo that. You might run into an issue where you try and move a strip, but it's not moving. If you kind of zoom out and do it again, what's probably happening is that the marker is being moved instead. This is a bug, and to get rid of the bug, you can either delete all your markers, or you just go here and you just lock the markers here. So just hit this button here, lock markers, and you shouldn't have that issue. So it's a very easy way to get rid of that really pesky bug that you might run into here. So just in general, these tabs here, they're worth looking at. They offer you some little things I haven't mentioned yet, but I don't really use a lot of this stuff. But they do offer you some functionality, and if you forget the stuff that I mentioned, you can just remind yourself by looking here. And just keep looking. The other thing I want to mention is Shift G, and this allows you to select everything by type. So if I click on a video strip and I do Shift G and I hit type, it's going to select every single video strip and any effect strips that are in relation to that video strip. And I can just delete them all if I want to. This is a very easy way to separate your video from your audio, or say I just want to render out my audio. I can easily just get rid of everything except the audio, and it'll allow for a smoother playback of my audio. So say I wanted to, I mentioned a couple ways to work around with the audio. One of them is to actually record via Audacity the playback here. So I, play it, just the audio. And what can happen though is if I have a lot of stuff in here, it'll sometimes jump a bit, the playback will. So if I just delete everything except my audio strips using the Shift G type to easily delete what I don't need to have here, it'll play a lot smoother. And I'm less likely to have issues with playback here. Yeah. And I can just undo at the end here. A good indicator is the FPS. If the FPS is, smooth at 24 in this case, it's probably going to play okay, the audio is. But if it's not, it might jump a little here and there. In terms of audio, I just want to mention again, my preferred method at the moment is if I have a lot of, audio edits like this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to avoid mixing them down in Blender. I'm going to compress them into as few channels as possible. So I'd move everything like this at the end, and then I would render out 1, 2, 3, 4 different channels using mix down. So I would mute this channel, then I would just render this audio, and then I would mute this and just render this, and I would repeat that for each one of them. And then in Audacity, what I would end up with is 4 tracks here. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. They'd all be stereo tracks. So it'll be 4 of these here. And I can easily, play around with this, listen to each track, change the volume of each of them, and then combine them at the end when I'm ready. And if I made a mistake, I can easily uncombine them and whatnot. Because if I mix all this stuff down, I'm going to end up with a single track here, and I'm not going to be able to mess around with the volumes of the individual segments. I'm going to have it all meshed together, and so I'm going to be changing the volume of everything that's combined here, and that can make for some very awkward editing, and you're not going to have the amount of flexibility that you had beforehand, basically. So that's my preferred method. And in terms of the volumes, I'd use waveforms I can actually see here. So as long as I can see them and they're not clipping, they're okay. You know, this is a bit small. I'd want something a bit bigger usually. And then I'd use the volume from 0 to 2 when I was messing around with volumes here anyways. I wouldn't you know, do anything too major with volumes. I just do little kind of settings. So I want something quiet, I'd go down from 1 to whatever, you know. So I'd play from 0 to 2. I'd render out each channel separately, and then I'd fine tune the volume and everything else in Audacity. That's the method I'm going to go with moving forward. So I would recommend something like that, or use one of my other methods I mentioned, or you know, don't even care if you're not having issues. Use render out your AAC or whatever else you want to use. But okay, next we're going to talk about appending briefly. I want to hurry this along. I know I always get bogged down by stuff here, but it's important stuff. I think I mentioned appending briefly before. But basically, appending, you find a different .blend file, which is a different Blender project. So each of these is a Blender project, for example. So I find another project. This is my current abridgment. So I click on it, and if I want to insert a scene from it, or a strip, a video strip from it, I would go to scene here, and I'd click here. And what this does is, if I go up here, it'll insert a scene like so. So I just click that and I can zoom out, and this is actually the entire project here, you know, reinserted here. And I can grab something, I can, you know, could box select a lot of stuff, or I can just grab one thing. I'm just going to grab a single strip. I hit Control C to copy it, and I can just go back to my other scene. And I can hit Control V and just drop it in. So that's a way to move things between projects. It's very roundabout, and it's not what you want, because the thing is with this is it does not respect keyframes. So I can't copy keyframes from this project and combine them with the other project. And you want to make sure the FPS is, you know, similar as well. You might run into some issues there, but yeah, keyframes are not respected. I need to actually redo any keyframes in my new scene here, which may or may not be an issue, depending on things. And you know, I showed you how to do you know, strips. If you want to reinsert masks themselves or little things like that. We go back to append, and we just go back here, and we go to, you know, mask, and we insert just the mask, and we do it again and again and again for each component that we want. And if I want to, you know, insert every single component, I would have to go through each and every single one of these and do it again and again and again. But yeah, so I'll just show you very quickly. I'm going to cover this in a minute, but that's the mask I inserted from the other project. And the thing to note, I don't remember if these are just static masks, or if it respects any kind of any of the keyframes. I don't think it does. So there's one last thing, very important thing. I will cover this as quickly as I can, but let's jump into it. This has to do with H.264 footage here, and transcoding and issues you may or may not run into. So if you get footage from online, it's probably going to have an H.264 codec. So what you need to know is that when I'm editing this footage, I want to render out as few times as possible. So pretty much just one time, because okay, let me try this again. So this is my original footage here, and it's gonna be kind of slow, but kind of just bear with it. So it looks okay, right? This is a 1080p footage here. You kind of notice this thing here. It's kind of weird, kind of pixelization that's going on here. It's kind of weird looking, it's messy. Yeah. So I rendered this out again. This is H.264 by default, right? But if I render it out as lossless H.264, you know, the highest quality possible. This is what I'm going to get. Whoa, so this got worse, this effect did. So just going back and forth, you'll notice the lighting kind of changes here. And you'll notice this stuff here gets worse. The pixelization gets worse. So if I change this to, you know, AVI, this is actually AVI, sorry, and this one's MP4. So they're all the same, basically, is what I'm trying to get at here. And this is Matroska here. So they all have the same issue, and that's because I'm rendering out as H.264 again here. So this here is something different. So if my original rendered out as a PNG with 16 bits of color, and as you can see here, it looks the same as the original, which is a big difference from, you know, what I got when I rendered out H.264 here. So this is because this has 16 bits of color in it. So I went here, I rendered out the original via PNG 16 bits of color depth here. So because I have a higher color, H.264 has 8 bits of color. Because of that, you run into this issue of the pixelization, and this is called artifacts. These things are. So you want to avoid this, and if you need to render something numerous times to clean up your project or whatever, which, you know, I had to do a few times, what you want to do is transcode. This is called transcoding. So making your original footage something with a higher number of bits to avoid the artifacts. The pixelization is, you know, called transcoding. And so you can, you know, upscale it to PNG 16-bit. You can do something a bit higher quality with the OpenXR. The only issue to note is the file sizes, and because I'm basically making a image, a PNG of every single frame here, and what I'm doing is I'm inserting it again as a strip, and I'll just show you how to do that quickly. So I do Shift-A, image, and I define my folder with all my rendered out PNG images, and I box select, or I use whatever selection tool I need, and I select them all, and I just hit add strip. And because they're numbered here, it's going to make a strip respecting the numbers here. So add image strip, and it makes the exact same strip pretty much, because it's the way I did it before here. So I'm just going to delete that. So there's no real difference between this and that, because the video is literally just a bunch of images put together. So I could edit this the exact same way I could edit that, basically. The other advantage is it's a bit easier to render any changes. So a recommendation that they have in the Blender manual is actually to render out your, if I had a video project that was just, you know, video strips, if I rendered it as a PNG, as a single PNG strip over top, I could easily apply any, I could easily render it again, basically. So if I so if I rendered this as a PNG, it would look like this. And if I just put it over top and I rendered again, it would go really, really fast, because it's easy for Blender to read a PNG image, a strip in this case, that doesn't have any or many effects on it. So if I want to apply some effects, it would render a lot faster as a PNG as opposed to this FFmpeg video here. So again, I'm just going to show you, if I rendered all this stuff out as a single strip, this is what I have here. So as you might imagine, this rendered as an H.26. Sorry, I rendered this entire thing out with the codec as H.264 and lossless, and as AVI in this case, but doesn't really matter. So if I render this, you know, what am I going to get here? Well, I'm going to get what I get here, and sure enough, yes, I get that. So what am I going to get for this though, the PNG? well, I get the exact same thing actually. So these two are the same. This and that, rendered as an H.264, are going to be the same thing. But this and that, because they are rendered again as H.264, what's going to happen? Whoa! Okay. So you get this crazy stuff going on, and it's all over the place. It's just in certain kind of textured areas. It's not everywhere. But you'll notice it in textured areas, and again, it really kind of hammers home the whole thing about the bits here. So because it's such a low bit rate, low number of color bits, you're getting this weird, crazy pixelization going on here. So again, just to recap, if my original footage is H.264 and I need to render it out a couple times before I render my final copy, what you should do is transcode to something with a higher color bit rate, like a PNG here, 16 bit, and then I can render this as many times as I want, and then my final copy I render out as H.264 again if I need to upload it or whatever. So hopefully that makes sense. So I mean, if you film a video, you'll get like a really high format, and then you basically do your editing, and then the very last thing you do is render it out with a codec like H.264. And if you did it twice, you're going to get this pixelization, right? So it's the very last thing you do is render. It's the same thing you apply here. It's unfortunate that we have to deal with H.264, in many cases as our, base footage. But if you don't need to deal with that as your base footage, don't. But if you do, only render it, once more as H.264. Don't render it twice more as H.264. So let's get into masking before I go insane here. So I'm going to do a very basic masking example. I want to do a circle within a circle. So I want to do a green circle and an orange circle. I want the orange circle to be within the green circle, and I want it to be, all on the black background, whatever, the default black background. So to do masking, I'm just going to change this back to info so it's not so difficult to know what the heck I'm doing. We go to UV image editor here. And by default you get this. You want to go to mask here. Make sure you're on the mask mode here. And what we're going to do is this is a different kind of space here. So usually you want to input a video or a picture, and we're going to do that. We're going to hit F12 to make a PNG snapshot of what we have in our preview window here. And it just so happens that we want to actually, make a mask using this color here. So I'm going to do new, and I'm going to name it, I should do mask 1. That's fine. Let's click off to the side here. So to do a circle, an easy way is to do Shift A and just circle. And just hit G, and I can just move it to the center, and just hit S to scale it, and I'm moving my mouse. That looks pretty good. So, ta-da, I have a mask. And what this is going to do is anything within the mask is going to be shown. Anything outside of it is going to be deleted, basically. So I'm going to apply it to my strip here. And to do that, I go down here, make sure it's selected, go to modifiers, and I go to mask, and find the name. So, ta-da! So that's what I wanted. Now I want an orange circle in the middle here. So the best way to do this, in my opinion, is to go to my orange one, and I can just do F12 again to get a picture of the orange one. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit A a few times and just make sure everything's selected here. I'm going to hit Control C. Then I'm going to make a new mask. So I'm just going to move that down. Hit the plus thing here. Let's call that mask 22222. And let's do Control V. So I made a copy of the other mask. And I just want to scale this down. So I hit S and I just, scale it down. And just left click, and ta-da! So what I'm going to do now is apply the mask to the orange one. Mask 2. Ta-da! And I put it over top of the green one. And I want to make it an overdrop so I can see them both. And ta-da! I have a circle within a circle. So pretty basic stuff. I'm going to show you one other thing though. So there's a technique you can do called a feather. And if I select my mask using A to select everything, and I click and drag holding shift from a node, one of these things here, and I drag outwards in this case. You might have to drag inwards, and I'll show you that in a second, but you get this green thing here, and you keep dragging, just drag it there, and just let go. And again, I'm using my scroll wheel to zoom in and zoom out, and I use my hitting my mouse button and holding it down to pan here. And so if what is this green thing here? Well, if I hit refresh here, you can see what it does here. It's called a feather, and it kind of fades stuff in gradually, so it's less harsh. The mask is, I guess, is the word to maybe use here. Less harsh, more gradual, kind of in and out. So I can change the direction if I needed to make it out instead of in by just hitting A few times and just selecting everything and just switch direction. So I might need to do that. If I do that in this case, it's not gonna show anything. It's gonna go back to the original. So I hit Control Z, undo, and I can clear the mask anytime. Just hitting clear here. I'm gonna undo that again, and let's do it for the green one, just for the heck of it. So we'll go back to the green one here, and again make sure everything's selected. Shift, grab, drag out, and let's hit refresh here to make it show up the change. Okay, awesome. So I can move the nodes originally around however I want. These are called Bezier curves. Because I used the preset, it has its own kind of properties here, but move it around a little bit just to show you. Modify my circle a little bit. So and so. That's pretty much masking. Masking is something you can just you could easily do in an image editor, but knowing how to do it in Blender it offers you some versatility and whatnot. So say I wanted to invert a mask here. What would that do? So I'm on the green mask here. I'm just going to do another image snapshot and of the most recent picture here. And if I invert the green mask, what's going to happen? Well, the green is going to go the other direction, right? So what was green is going to be the alpha channel. What wasn't is going to be the green thing now. So I'm just going to click that. And sure enough, yep, that's exactly what happens. So I could, go back and forth, and just an easy way. You'll need to use this for various effects because you'll need a mask, and you'll need an inverted version of that mask to make the proper effect. Okay, so the way I recommend doing is to make one mask, one closed mask per saved file. So I could have done 2 here, for example, but if you do that, you might mess something up, and you don't have as much control over each individual component as you might want moving on. So I generally recommend just do one closed mask per saved mask file here. Okay, let's talk about something else then. So another technique is, say I have here, and I have brown and black. I just call her black because of the hair and brown because of the hair, and we have Yuzu here in the center. So I have a scene here, her lips moving here, she's talking.
There's blood everywhere.
But then she's not talking here. So say I wanted to add some audio and make her talk here. Well, what would I do here? How would I make her lips kind of move back and forth? Well, I could take her lips moving here and just have that for here, but black here is moving in a different way, so there's other stuff moving around in the scene. So I can't, just, grab that and cut it and put it back and forth like I would normally, because I want the other things in the scene to be respected here. So I can make a mask here. And what I can do is I could come down here. Yuzu isn't moving. Most of Yuzu isn't moving anyway. So I could just come straight down here, do like a rectangle basically. And then what I would do is I would keep this as an overlay. But the other side, her, I could just move back and forth. So her lips are, moving. And I could add in some audio over top. That's one method. Another method is maybe I just, add lips as an overlay over top. So I do an actual lip flap here. So how would I do a lip flap here? Well, generally what you do is you look for, because of it's animated footage, it's very easy for you to do and to show you how you can do little things like this. But, for real life footage, it's a bit more complicated. But we'll just look at this stuff for now. So generally we have like a free kind of parts to a lip flap. We have like a closed mouth here, we have a semi-open, and we have a full open mouth here. So what I would need to do is I want to take the full open and the semi-open, because I have the closed already. So what I would do is I would find a frame with what I want. So there's one here, put a marker, and one here. So I can make an image of this one. And I'm going to do a new mask. And if I just do a circle again, so Shift A, circle. I just kind of scale that down, same way as before. I'll just move it around actually. And because it's a solid color, I don't need to worry so much about making this blend in. So I'm not going to worry about a feather in this case. If I needed some help blending it in, I'd use a feather, and I'd have to be more exact, but I don't need that in this case. So what am I going to do? I'm going to make a duplicate of this strip, and I'm going to basically put it as an overdrop, more or less. So I'm going to name this mouth 1, or semi, and I'm going to apply the mask to duplicate it. I'm going to make it an overdrop as well. Actually, I'll just keep it as cross to show you what happens here. So I'm going to mask, go to mouth semi, and as expected we get this. So I'm going to do the same thing for the other one. Just hit F12, make sure my mask covers it. Oops, I need to make a new mask, right? So I can actually copy this and make a new one, paste, and just modify it a little bit. Okay, I'm going to duplicate this and apply my mask one more time. Just make sure it's the other one. It's named mask. I'm going to name it open here. Okay, awesome. So I'm going to click and drag these over. And so again, it was blank here. But we have some audio maybe going on here, and so I would look at the waveform here, and assuming this was actually her talking, I would kind of say, okay, it starts here. So I would put a semi-open here, and I'll look here and see that each kind of flap takes up 2 frames. So I make a duplicate here. And I want to make this an overdrop, so it actually shows up here. Do it for that as well. So semi-open, and then we go to full open, and I'm duplicating it with Shift D again. And I could go back and forth, and I could just, mess around with this, depending on what I need for an effect. So it could close immediately, or it could, go back and forth, and I could, duplicate all this if I needed to over and over again. So that's how you do a lip flap, basically, in the most, basic way. If I needed to move this, if like I wanted to, I could actually move use her lips on somebody else if I wanted to, if it fits. And to do that, you just, do Shift A, Control. So I could just apply the overdrop again, and maybe she moved around a bit. So I could just, I could scale it, I could move it up, down, and move it over top, whatever I would need to move it over top of, like so. Anyways, yeah, that's pretty much lip flaps if you have a static lip flap. Anyways, pretty easy way to do things for this kind of footage. If you're dealing with real life type stuff, we're going to move on to how to do moving kind of masks and using this button here. So we're going to move on to the third example here. And there's going to be two variations of this example here. So I'm going to show you what we're going to deal with here. So we have a box, and Yuzu opens it, and inside is another box with a box strap sticking out. It's just a box within a box. It's kind of weird, but that's just what it is. So what we're going to do is we're going to put an image within this box. We'll just use this image here. So how would I put this image so that when she opens the box, she sees the image instead of that thing there? So how would I do that? Well, how would I do that? Well, it's basically a case of you want to make this the box lid and the hands as an overdrop, and you want this plopped in between, so it's over top of the the base image here, the box within the box, and then I'll have the overdrop over top like this. So it'll be like a sandwich basically. So we're going to do that right now actually. So we want to shrink down the image so it fits just in the box. We'll do a transform. I'm just going to mute the image there. Scale. Put it over top here. And scale to 0. I want to do overdrop. Actually, just do alpha over here. I'm gonna change the scaling so I can just fit it. Usually you use uniform scale, but for this example I'm just gonna use it like that. So I want now to make this box in her hands as an overlay, so you're not seeing the image until she opens it up like that. So how do I do that? I'm just going to mute this. So the thing to look for is, where do I need to start my mask basically? And about here. So this is I could start it right here basically, because I don't need to worry about anything at this point, right? So I can actually cut here if I wanted to. Yeah, let's actually make a cut here. And I'm going to put a marker here. So my mask starts here, and I'm masking out the hand and the lid basically. It keeps going, 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 and it stops right about there. So the way you can do this is, there's a couple ways to do this stuff. The easy way, in my opinion, generally, and the way I use a lot, is to do a snapshot effect. But we're not going to do that. We're going to do something a bit different here. We're going to actually make a video of the video and use the video as the reference to make our mask. So I'm going to make another video of just this here, and I'm going to load the video in, so we have a duplicate here, just to show you how to do it that way. So we're going to make another tab here. Go to render, and this is it doesn't need to be that amazing, so let's do low quality. MP4 is fine. And I'm going to render it to that's fine. It's a very quick video render. And the way I generally recommend, a very easy way, is just to actually reinsert the video that you just rendered, and which I have here. And you put things at the 0 point here in the timeline. So if I, wanted to render something out here, I'd actually move it all the way over here to the 0 point. And there's a reason why I do that, and I'm going to show you that right now. Okay, so we're going to actually load in this video into here. So how we do that is we open image, and I gotta find it here. Why? Okay, and because what we need to do immediately is do what I do here. So I'm gonna set it to 0 here, because start at the 0 frame here. And this gets really screwy really fast if you don't start at the 0 frame. Based on my experience, like, you should be able to line it up. So, but I recommend just doing it this way until you get used to it. So I want to set that to 0, and I want to set this to 0. And I want to hit auto refresh and match movie length with this selected here. And then when I change frames using my arrow key or my mouse here. Okay, great. So basically what I wanted was for these two to line up. Generally when you do masks, you want to not have a proxy. I don't have a proxy in this case, which is good. So I should move along here, and it should be line up. It should line up okay, and it does. So great. So I can start my mask here. So to do a mask, you just do Control left click to insert a starting node, and Control left click again. And you kind of keep going. This uses Bezier curves, and these have their own kind of learning curve to them because they're curves. But yeah, anyways, you'll kind of figure it out on your own how to do it. But I'm not going to cover technique today. I'll just, we're just going to do a basic mask. So generally, why is it doing this? Let's do this again. So Bezier curve. So basically I just go around. I can just click as many times as I want to. I'm just doing a really basic mask. I want to go around, in this case probably the hands, and if I was thinking about it, I wouldn't, I would just probably go around from there, but I'm not really thinking. So we'll just cover what I'm covering here. Okay, great. So I could just keep clicking, and it kind of snapped itself, but I could just undo that for a second. So if I continue from here, and sometimes you want to close it, sometimes you don't. To close the cyclic, you can hit Alt-C, and it'll close from the start to the end. It's a straight line, so just kind of note that, or I can click here apparently. Or I can go here and toggle cyclic if I want to. So from there I can left click in between the two nodes, and I can just move around, okay, to get a better fit. And you want to use like a combination of these handles and clicking to get it to fit. And again, they have their own kind of technique to using these curves, and it's trial and error. I'm just going to do something fairly basic here. That's fairly good. So what I'm going to show you now is, because this is animated, we can hit this button and it allows us to insert keyframes automatically. So to insert a keyframe here, what I would do is I'd highlight everything with A, hit G, and just right click, dropping it back to where it was before. And that inserts a keyframe basically. And to see these keyframes, we're going to open the dope sheet here. And I'm going to go to whatever mask this is. So I'm gonna mask, mask. Hit home, and just kind of zoom in a bit here. So this is our first keyframe, which I just made here. So what I'm going to do now is just use my arrow keys, and I suggest you use arrow keys not to mess stuff up. So it's going 1, 2. I'm going to find the next movement stage here. So we moved here. So because it's such, we're dealing with something like the footage as is, and it's not fluid. There's like a huge jump here. What I'm going to do is going to put a keyframe right before the jump. So again, I hit A, select everything, and just click and drop and drag down. And then I'm going to make a new keyframe at the jump here. So I can hit G and just move everything around. And from there I could scale it if I wanted to get a better fit. But you need to move things again to get them to line up fairly well. So I move stuff around again. I can box select a bunch of nodes if I want, and use these techniques to just, get things to move to where I need them to move to. And this is going to be a very clumsy mask, but should show what it needs to show. Okay, so we're going to do highlight everything again, hit G, right click, so to make sure we have the proper keyframe, insert it there. Just going to go here. So as you can see, we have 3 keyframes now. So let's pause, and we're actually gonna look at what we've done so far. So we're gonna insert the mask here. So we're gonna modifiers for the overdropped one. We can actually set this to overdrop just for the heck of it. And we're gonna mask here, and we're gonna mask, and just the name of the mask here. So as you can see here, we go back. We have the start of our mask. So this is 3 keyframes. Start keyframe kind of goes on indefinitely. And we hit here. So it was important that we do right before, because if I got rid of this, it would have done a weird, the mask would have moved in such a way each frame so it would connect fluidly. But because the animation isn't fluid, we don't want that. So we put a keyframe right beforehand to tell it that from here to here, there's nothing fluid happening. It's docile. The mask should not move at all, because it would move to somewhere in between here and here. So probably around here-ish or something like that. Anyways, let's keep going here. And we can actually have this as is. It's fine. So I want to make another keyframe here, and then we move here. And I'm just going to move it really roughly here. That's a-okay for me. And I'm just going to refresh, and ta-da, good. And again, this is right before. And then our next one right here, I'm going to hit G, move it back here. Yeah, that's pretty good. Hit refresh. Do it again. Make sure I always insert a keyframe right before, because that's important. And ta-da, we're done. I just hit refresh again, and we're good. So this is my overdrop here. And I'll just show you quickly. I'm going to move this stuff over one. So because it's an overdrop, I have my background here. Right, sorry, so I need to move this back here, and I had my mask start here, right? So I set up my mask here, and then I can just move it when I'm done, is basically what I do here. If I, did my mask here, it's going to be weird and crazy. So make sure you, do the mask from the 0 point so it's lined up here. And then when you're done, you can just move it around to where it needs to be in the timeline here. So kind of messy, but give me a second here. I need to keep these open because I want to show you a few things, but here. Ta-da! It's a very rough, but you get the idea, hopefully, to some extent. Move that. See, I actually made a mistake. I need to move this one more over. There. See? Pretty cool. Okay, so say I made a mistake here when I was making my mask. And I'm just gonna go back here. Well, what you can do, say let's go to home again here. So if you remember, I put a keyframe right before I make any changes. So the right before point might be here, for example. Delete that keyframe. Delete keyframes. Yep. Just want to get rid of that. So what would happen here if I have that jump here? Well, it's gonna move in between here, and it's not supposed to move in between there, is it? And that's why I put a keyframe right before the jump, because I knew the animation wasn't fluid. And so as you can see, it's moving in between the two here. So those are the two, and it's going to make a mask in between. Sorry, it's going to make a movement in between the two there, which is what I don't want. What I would do is I would move the mask again. So I'd have to redo everything for this specific mask here, which is a bit of a hassle, but it's just how it's going to be if you make a mistake. And yeah, so it'll be a little bit of movement just because I can't make it exact, but it respects itself more or less. So yeah, that's masking using the relative path there. Say I don't want to do this, and I don't even want to render it out and do the video method ever again. Well, there's a way to do that, and I'll show you that right now. So the other method is I'm just gonna unlink everything here by clicking the X's, make a new mask, and what we want to deal with, I'm going to get rid of the dope sheet. We don't really need it anymore anyways. So we're going to change images and put this one in there. So how do we do that? Well, the way to do this, and again, make sure you know when this is on, because you might accidentally insert keyframes in a way you don't want to. And any movement you do in a mask, like if I move stuff around and I didn't mean to put keyframes in there, it's going to make a keyframe. So if I made a keyframe by accident, again, go into the dope sheet and delete it the way I did a minute ago. But anyways, let's look at this again. So an easy way to mask anywhere in a video, so I could be way over here, for example, way over here. So say it's way over here and I don't want to move it over there, I don't want to make a video, I don't want to do any of that stuff. Hey everyone, sorry, I needed to make a new session here. So we're going to do example 4 using this here. So this is going to be the same thing as example 3, and I'm just going to set things up the same way. But I'm going to use the absolute mask instead of relative mask. So we use the relative mask in example 3 This is going to be the absolute mask example though. So I'm making my mask the same way I would for the relative one, except I use a PNG snapshot. So I use the F12 command instead of inserting a video here. So I use F12, I got my initial image. I know that each keyframe or iteration is going to be 2 frames. So I'm going to make the initial mask, grab it with A, the entire thing, use G, click and drag down, release, and make sure the keyframe is updated and set. Then I'm going to move 1 frame over and just do the same thing, hit G, click and drag, release. That'll make sure another keyframe is set right before the next movement. Then I move 1 frame over, and then I take another snapshot here, and then I move my mask again with G to line it up to the new image. But I use the R command here to rotate, and by using a combination of G, R, and rotate, and S to scale, you can very easily make the different iterations of the mask and get your different keyframes lined up really easily here, a lot faster as well. So I'm just using, again, G to move here, R to rotate here, and then when it's good enough, I just use A to select everything, hit G, click and drag down, and then just release to update the keyframe. Because when I move everything and release it like that, I'm updating the entire keyframe for that frame, basically. Okay, that's pretty much it. So I continue that way. And the issue at the end here is that, it's going to show up in a second, is that everything's offset by 1 frame. And what I need to do is actually go up and make sure the mask starts at the 0 point, because I start the mask at the very start of the strip, which is considered the 0 point. So you'll see in a second I change it from 1 to 0 up top there. And that's pretty much all I wanted to cover here. So hopefully this is a lot easier to use, just F12 rather than making a video and all that stuff. And here you see the issue, right? Everything's offset by 1 frame. The UV image preview and the preview window are not lining up. They're not they're different, like you can see right there. So I just go up here and I go down and I see, okay, that's not what I want. Then I go up to the top, let's change it from 1 to 0, and that fixes the issue there. Okay, that's pretty much everything. So thank you for your time. I know this was a lot longer than I said it would be, but hopefully that teaches you quite a bit. So my preference right now is to use these absolute masks, but for learning and starting out, you might want to just use relative, because they are more consistent, more easier to get by with, and you might run into issues with absolute masks if you don't have all this stuff in your head already. But okay, thank you again. Hopefully that was helpful, and I'll see you next time. Bye.